until thou perish quickly, because of the wickedness of thy doing.
Notice, Moses is getting on the Israelites for the wickedness of our doings. He says he's warning us, if we break God's laws, these are the things that will happen to you. When we came out of Egypt, the Israelites were a mighty race. It tells you that the nations paid King David and King Solomon tribute. That's how mighty we were. After that, however, we went and broke God's laws. Next slide, please. So now remember, this Bible was written over 3,000 years ago. This part that we're reading, let me say it like that. What Moses wrote here is written over 3,000 years ago. Next slide. Let me get to verse, now this is dealing with cursed shalt thou be in a city. There's Tulsa, Oklahoma, bottom left, Black Wall Street. Many of you have read about it, correct? You've read about it? Many times Caucasians will say to you, why don't you get your own, do your own thing? Why don't you go get into your own city? They don't mean that. The evidence that they don't mean that was Tulsa, where our ancestors said, okay, we will do our own. We did it, we were very successful. They dropped dynamite from planes and killed many, many, many of us. Many articles on it. They haven't done a movie on it yet. I'm waiting for that. So that's when they get on you and say, why don't you do your own thing, become an entrepreneur, separate from whites. They don't mean that, because we are the workforce in America. Without us working for them, the economy would go very, very bad. Next slide. Okay, verse 21, please.
Verse 21, the Lord shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee, until he have consumed thee from off the land, whither thou goest to possess it.
So now pestilence, many of you read about the what happened during Plymouth Rock, when Britain came over and they gave the Native American Indians blankets with smallpox. They did the same thing in Mexico, and they inflicted and then put disease on them, and that's how they helped overthrow them. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, verse 23, let's read that.
And thy heaven that is over thy head shall be brass, and the earth that is under thee shall be iron.
So now, if you all know about a little bit about slavery, the slaves had brass bells over their head, the runaway slaves, brass bells, and iron shackles on their ankles. All right, next slide, please. Next slide. There's some key points I want. Give me verse 25.
The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies.
Remember that word, enemies there. Remember that word. Go ahead.
Thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them, and shalt be removed into all kingdoms of the earth.
You see that part where it says, we shall flee 7 ways and shall be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth? Next slide. Here's an example of fleeing 7 ways and being removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. This is the transatlantic slave trade, okay? If you notice, they got some of us from Senegal, Sierra Leone, the west coast of Africa, including the Congo, Angola, South Africa as well. And they brought us over to Buenos Aires, El Salvador, Central America, North America. Now this is a very limited map. We have other maps where it shows they took us to East India, they took us to Iran, they took us to Iraq. They separated us all over the globe to make sure we would never unite as a race again. Watch this, next slide. Okay, here, this is from the sub-Sahara slave trade, which was just before the transatlantic slave trade, where the Islamic Arabs enslaved us. They made a pact with Europe, as well as certain African nations, certain of them, okay? And they helped bring us into slavery. Next slide, please. Next slide. I want to get to some key points. Next slide. Give me verse 32. Yeah, right here. Let's start at verse 32. Go ahead.
Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand.
This is amazing because many times they say the Bible's for everybody. Everybody on the earth did not go into slavery. That's a misconception. Everybody did not go into slavery. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto, notice 2 words there, another people. That means another race of people. That's what it means, another people. and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long. If you ever watched the movie Roots, Mandingo, Drums, even 12 Years a Slave, even Birth of a Nation, they show you examples of when our children were taken from us, we did not have the power to get them back. That's what it means. That bottom part, and there shall be no might in thine hand. We would have no economic might or military might to unite our race again. That's what the prophecy is. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide.
6. The Lord shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known. And there shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone.
So when we were brought over here, we were serving other gods. Gods that don't look like us, Caucasian gods, even made of wood and stone. We got the white image of Jesus, Mary, St. Peter, St. Paul, so forth and so on. As well as Allah, the in the Kaaba stone. Next slide, please. Okay, verse 37.
And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations whither the Lord shall lead thee.
That's a very good precept. Many people don't know what that means, though. I'm going to show an example in the Bible of what it means. Give me Daniel 1, verse 6. I'm going to show you what it means. Daniel 1, verse 6. Daniel chapter 1 and verse 6. I'm going to show you what they did to us in slavery to explain a proverb and a byword.
Daniel chapter 1 verse 6. Now among these were of the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names. For he gave unto Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah of Abednego.
So they changed the names of the slaves. That's what happened. So now, the young lady here said that she was Ethiopian in Nigeria. The word Ethiopia, you know the origin of that word? It's a Greek word. It means faces burnt. It's Greek. Greek, or it has nothing to do with us at all. It has a meaning to us that fits us, but the word itself has nothing to do with us, as well as the word Nigeria. Go to the next slide. Watch this. Next slide. Okay, here's some proverbs. When the slaves came over, they changed our identities. They called some of us African Americans. The term West Indian, do any of you know what that word means? West Indian. The word Indian, you know what it means?
Yeah, because they believe that they were going to India, but it was in the West.
You know what the word Indian means?
No.
Okay, it comes from the Latin word indio, which means servant, slave. So when you say West Indian, you're saying Western slave. But you have many people cheer, I'm West Indian. You don't know what you're saying. Okay, then you have Puerto Rican. That's another common, what they did to the slaves there in Puerto Rico, which means port of riches. Puerto Ricans are some of the poorest people today. Don't feel offended if you're Puerto Rican in here. But that's why many people come to the Americas. Cuban, Mexican, Dominican, which means Sunday, Colombian, Brazilian. These are all the names that the Caucasians put on their slaves. Then they gave us their last names. What's your last name?
Big, yeah.
Okay. What's yours? Stephen. What's yours? Okay. These are all names of the slave masters who owned you. And many black people we have was family reunions. You heard of that? Family reunion. Oh, I'm from the Miller family. And do you know what they did to the slaves? So if you were a runaway, how would they know you belong to the Miller or Stevenson or whatever? They branded the name of your owner in your back. He belongs to the Millers. She belongs to the Stevensons. So the name of your slave owner was branded in your back. That's what they did here in America, Britain, the Caribbean, so forth and so on. So if you notice all these proverbs and bywords, so Moses is initially saying your identities would change in slavery. Your names would be changed. So let's look at it so far. Your sons and daughters would be given to another people, and their names would be changed. Watch this. Let's get some more. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. I just want to get